be seated. I would now like to turn the microphone over to Peter Wallace for his opening remarks.
Thanks, Dondi, and welcome everybody this afternoon to this informal, but I think going to be very informative session today. The President has kindly agreed to join us, and for us to present to him just 3 or 4 of the sectors that we represent, for him to get a sense and a feel to how the foreign business community is operating in the Philippines, and some of the things that he might be able to do to help encourage you to expand your businesses and for us to bring new businesses into the country. I think we're seeing a very positive reputation for the Philippines today for the first time in a long time. There's a growing, slow but growing interest, and I think that interest now will start to accelerate. So hopefully this will be a catalyst towards doing that. I'd like to make just a few quick points if I can. We were asked to do this about a week ago. So we were told that you've got 2 days to prepare your presentation and you've got 10 minutes in which to talk. And as you can see, Woodrow Wilson had worked it out very well. It's easy to talk for half an hour. It's damned hard to talk for 10 minutes. But we are going to try. The Wallace Business Forum, sir, is a company that's been in business for 30 years in the Philippines now. Represents about 150 multinationals and large Filipino companies, various embassies, international financial organizations, and we provide for them information on what's happening in the Philippines, understanding it, and helping to develop relations between government and business. And as you can see, the level of investment and sales and employment from this group is a very large part of the Philippine economy. We cover virtually every sector of the economy. We do a survey from time to time and ask, what do you think are the best features of the Philippines, and what do you think are the worst? And the interesting thing is that the best features are the people. There's no question that comes out outstandingly that the people themselves are what make this country. On the other side, I'm sorry to say, it's been the government. Fortunately, we're seeing a shift, and I want to congratulate you on the concentration that you put on fighting corruption, because as you can see, it is the number 1 issue for us as well. The next step for you will be to get down to that institutional level where corruption still exists in the local levels that make it difficult to do business on a day-to-day basis. So I think that the effect that you're creating here is going to do a lot of good. So what we need is to eliminate corruption, simplify the bureaucracy, have consistency in policy, infrastructure, massive investment has to occur there, and if they are done, we will see a great increase in investment in the country. We were at the bottom. Over the last 30 years, we've been the slowest growing by about half. And I believe that one of the major reasons has been, in a number of cases, the wrong leadership for this country and the various, as you've well identified, corruption, wang-wangs. The superiority of people over others has been, I think, something that made things difficult. If you get stuck in traffic, you're going to try and do something about it. But we're seeing a turnaround now. A really impressive first quarter. And I think that may slow down a little as we go through the year, but it will still be strong and much stronger than we have seen in the past. The 7.6% in 2010 that Gloria likes to claim and boast that she achieved was not 7.6, it was 4.6, I could explain to you one day. We have a very strong fiscal situation and monetary situation, thanks to an excellent central bank governor who was, I believe, the central bank governor head of Asia a couple of years ago. So as I say, it's more fun doing business in the Philippines today. These are some ideas. I won't go through them. I'm giving you a report on this, and it will be in my column the next 2 weeks. These are some ideas I have for you to consider, and I won't cover them now, but you can look at them later. I'd like to turn over now to John, John, if you'd like to... Is it... Kaloy, okay.
Your Excellency, President Benigno S. Aquino III, members of the Aquino Cabinet, Peter Wallace, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Carlito Realuyo. I'm Filipino. I'm President and General Manager of Sanofi Aventis, a global healthcare leader focused on patients' needs. I'm honored to be here with you today to represent the Pharmaceutical and Healthcare Association of the Philippines, to which I serve as President. We are very grateful for this opportunity. The Pharmaceutical Healthcare Association of the Philippines, or PHAP, is an association of 46 local and foreign pharma firms as members. We are one of the lead advocates of the Safe Medicines Network, and the membership operates and abides by a strict code of ethics. PHAP fully supports the government's healthcare initiative, Kalusugan Pangkalahatan. Let me start my discussion on how our country measures up with our Southeast Asian neighbors in terms of healthcare indicators. The Philippines' total healthcare expenditure as a percent of GDP is comparable with our Asian neighbors, but still below WHO recommendation of 5%. The Philippine total healthcare expenditure or per capita spend is low compared with Thailand and Malaysia, but comparable with Indonesia and Vietnam. Together with Vietnam, Philippines rank among the highest with a high out-of-pocket cost. The Philippine local industry is a 125 billion peso market where more than 500 companies operate. The biggest company is a local company with 23 market share. The rest of the company have either less than 10% market share points each. Generic and local companies dominate with a volume market share of 64% of the total market today. Our country ranks third after China and India in terms of generics penetration. Since 2009, with the implementation of the MDRP, the maximum drug retail price, and the GMAP, the government mandated or mediated access price, the industry growth has slowed down from 10% to 2%, with practically no volume growth. Poverty is at the core of the issue when it comes to healthcare access, not prices. 6 out of 10 of our countrymen will never see a doctor. The poor, who can barely pay for food and shelter, will never have enough for healthcare. Health and drugs become an additional expense. PHAP supports majority of the Aquino's government's healthcare reform agenda, specifically the following: RA 9711, which is the FDA strengthening, the Mexico City Declaration, universal healthcare, and the PPP. We were against the price regulation mandated and implemented in 2009. When the law was passed, PHAP members followed, reducing prices of over than 200 medicines. But the poor's continued lack of access to healthcare remains problematic up until today. We are respectfully against current moves in Congress to create Drug Price Regulatory Board. Drug Price Control Authority already is set and rests under the DOH Secretary and the President of the Philippines. And we believe this is enough and sufficient. We support RA 9711, efforts to strengthen the Food and Drug Administration. We agree to increase fees and encourage government to fast-track approval of FDA's revenue retention, so FDA can build capacity and improve services and enforcement as well. We commend and are very proud that Your Excellency endorsed the Mexico City Declaration, or Principles for Voluntary Codes of Business Ethics in the biopharmaceutical sector during the last APEC meeting in Hawaii. Our code of ethics in PHAP are fully aligned with this. and we are actively encouraging our local counterparts in the Philippine Chamber of the Pharmaceutical Industry, or the PCPI, another large pharmaceutical industry association in the country, to come up with similar rules and mechanisms for ethical marketing, so that the entire industry can operate under a more responsible, rules-based marketing code of conduct. PHAP, the Department of Health, and other healthcare stakeholders believe that we should move beyond patchwork solutions than what happened in 2009 with the price reduction. We support the rollout of programs to minimize the out-of-pocket expenses of indigents and efforts to create a roadmap and legislate universal health care. We also support the move of Congress to increase sin taxes to generate revenues to fund health care programs. PHAP has actively partnered with DOH and PhilHealth in making our medicines affordable for selected communities, for selected catastrophic diseases, outpatient medicine packages, and we are very willing to partner with government on vaccines research and development and building manufacturing capacity here in the Philippines. Of course, to improve healthcare outcomes here in the Philippines. We as an industry continue to invest and support your administration in improving healthcare services here in the Philippines. Let us continue to work and partner together. Let us continue to increase healthcare spending to meet the WHO recommendation. Together with all other healthcare stakeholders, let us build the roadmap and legislate universal healthcare to strengthen the Department of Health's capacity in primary healthcare and increase social insurance coverage and benefits. Please do so. Continue to create a stable regulatory environment, a transparent and free market environment that encourages investment in healthcare. All this, we believe, will improve patient access to healthcare and expand the market as well. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone.
Thanks, Kaloy. John, could we ask you to speak next? John Miller of Nestle, talk about agribusiness.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, Honourable Secretaries, ladies and gentlemen, I'd really like to thank the Wallace Forum and the President in particular for giving us this opportunity to share a perspective on agribusiness in the Philippines. I'd like to talk about two subjects in particular, coffee and milk, both subjects obviously very pertinent to my business, which is Nestle in the Philippines. I'm often surprised that as chairman of a business which has been in the Philippines now for 100 years, I often get asked, do you manufacture your products, your brands, which I think are well known, in the Philippines? And I'm always delighted to be able to say that we certainly do. In fact, 95% of our products are made here in the Philippines. And they are manufactured in our 5 factories in Cagayan de Oro, Pulilan, Lipa, and Cabuyao. And indeed, later this month, we will be opening our 5th installation, which is our factory at Tanawan in Batangas, where we're investing 5 billion pesos. Indeed, I had the pleasure of doing that when we met in London recently. So as a company, we employ around 3,400 people. I'm proud to say that, in fact, rather than importing, we are actually a source of exports to the rest of the world. We actually export to 23 countries around the world. And I'm also proud to say that in 2010, we were the #1 taxpayer. Why do we manufacture here in the Philippines? Well, 4 very, very strong and good reasons. First and foremost, the highly competent and skilled workforce, the good industrial relations that we're able to enjoy here, cost competitiveness, and last but not least, for a business which is in the fast-moving consumer goods business, we have a very large and increasingly prosperous local domestic market. However, and it's a large however, we do have to import 80% of our raw materials. And it's here that I'd like to talk about coffee and milk. I'll talk about coffee to start with. The stark reality is that the local supply of coffee is inadequate to meet increasing demand driven by ourselves, but not only ourselves, our very able and aggressive competitors. We're in a position where we buy 80% of our coffee, in fact, locally here in the Philippines, and I'm delighted to say that, in fact, compared with the coffee that we have to import, Filipino coffee is of a very high standard and is, in fact, more productive than coffee that's imported from elsewhere in the world. Unfortunately, this only covers 20% of our requirements. The situation on milk is even more stark, as I think is probably well known. Local milk production, which really has fallen into decline, we're only able to meet 1% of the country's needs through locally harvested milk, and so milk is largely imported predominantly from New Zealand. Quality is also an issue. What are the implications for a business like our own of importation? Well, of course, shipping raw materials in from countries as far away as New Zealand incurs shipping times and shipping costs, which we bear as an industry, and of course, ultimately, the consumer also bears. In a country which suffers 21 typhoons, there is always the risk of the interruption of supply to the market. It also means that we have to carry higher inventories, which means that more cash is tied up, cash that could be available for investment in manufacturing. And of course, there is the issue of tariffs. There's another reason why we are strongly committed to the development of agriculture in the Philippines, and that's because we believe, and I believe this is also true of many other businesses represented here today, that a business, while obviously having an obligation to our shareholders, also has an obligation to the society and the community in which we operate. We cannot prosper unless the country and the community in which we operate also prospers, and rural development plays a key role in this. And it's for this reason that we've actually signed an agreement with the Ministry of Agriculture, the Department of Agrarian Reform, and the Department of Natural Resources. And I'd just like to talk briefly about this project, which I think is a very good model of what the President and the Cabinet talk about when they speak of PPP. First of all, the contributions of the different stakeholders in this project. Well, the government provides land, manpower, farming implements, and post-harvest facilities. Companies, like our own, provide technological expertise, training, varieties of seedling, particularly seedlings which will prosper here in the environment of the Philippines. We have a mother plant garden which actually nurtures these crops, and we also provide buying stations around the country so that the farmer doesn't have to come to Metro Manila to market produce. The private sector, obviously private individuals, supply land and investment, and the farmer, of course, very importantly, supplies his or her hard work. The benefits, and I think these are profound, for the government, employment is created, support is given for small farmers and indigenous people, and of course all of this generates income. For ourselves, of course, we provide that crucial flow of raw material, in this case coffee. For the private sector, a return on their investment, and for farmers, perhaps most importantly of all, a prosperous livelihood. Just to give you a flavour for the wins achieved so far, and we really are at the beginning of a long journey here, 2,000 hectares of land planted nationwide, 2 million coffee seedlings planted, 2,500 farmers trained, and 2 investor fora held. A few words about milk. Obviously, Nestlé is a company which depends very heavily on milk. We work in 30 countries, and we work daily with about 300,000 farmers. I'd just like to share with you one example which I think is pertinent to the Philippines, and that is Pakistan, where we have taken the same principles that I just spoke about in terms of coffee farming, bringing expertise such as animal husbandry, chilling facilities, and daily collection of milk. And this has led to a regeneration of dairy farming in Pakistan, to the point where we're working with 190,000 farmers in 3,000 villages. Weekly payments of between 3 to 5 million are made to small farmers. And we're also partnering with the United Nations Development Project to provide training for over 4,000 female livestock workers. Now, obviously, dairy in the Philippines, and here I have to say we absolutely salute the government's statement that you wish to make the Philippines self-sufficient in dairy. We stand ready to help in this regard. Of course, traditionally, the Philippines does not have a dairy culture, and it will inevitably take time. I believe a good starting point would be a technical feasibility study, and certainly our experts stand ready to help in this respect. So, if I may conclude, 3 important points to my mind. What I'm talking about here is not something which is going to transform the agricultural economy of the Philippines overnight, but I believe that working together we can truly bring about change. This is a long-term commitment, I believe, both from the government and certainly from industry. We believe also that to attract further foreign direct investment, industry needs large industrial quantities of quality, highly competitively priced agricultural produce. And here I think the government is already playing a very important role. And I've spoken of the availability of land, support for farmers, attractive incentives for farmers, and of course infrastructure, so important in terms of bringing product to market. So in summary, I really do believe that through partnership, both government and business can regenerate agriculture in the Philippines, and in so doing create shared value. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Sanjeev, may we ask you to talk about banking and finance? Thank you.
President Aquino, Governor Tatanko, Cabinet Secretaries, it's a privilege and an honor to be here today. At the outset, I'd like to first congratulate the President and your team at the strong performance of the Philippines economy and the markets. And I think a strong evidence of that is the fact that the stock market index is at its record high. And this morning, we actually listed the first $1 billion rights equity issue for BDO, which is the first for the Philippines, an equity issue of this size. And I think what it really shows is the attractiveness of the Philippines today to the international investor class. I think Philippines is in a very unique, I would also say it's probably a sweet spot today where it's attracting interest from international investors, both in terms of primary as well as secondary flows. What I would like to present today is basically initiatives which are actually work in progress already, and the underlying message really is for us to fast track and expedite some of these things to take advantage of the position Philippines is in today, which will benefit both Filipino and Filipino companies. So without further ado, let me jump straight into the initiatives which we would like to discuss. First of all, in terms of the expansion of credit, the expansion of credit is directly linked to economic growth, Mr. President. And the couple of things that we picked up is, first of all, is mortgages. Today, foreign lenders are unable to provide lending against collateral of land, and we believe that mortgages constitute a very important part of the economic framework, and they also offer a multiplier effect, because once somebody buys a house, it leads towards furnishing it, appliances, so it has economic multiplier which is very, very effective. What we are really requesting here is that the foreign lenders should be able to, in a limited way, be able to allow to foreclose property which can then be transferred to a Filipino investor over a period of time prescribed by the BSP. This is something which has already been done in the MSME Magna Carta, so this is nothing new. What we are trying to propose is if it can be extended onto other forms of mortgage lending so it goes beyond the MSME Magna Carta. The second point we are making is on mandated lending. Again, mandated lending has been abandoned in a number of countries because, one, it seems to be outdated. Secondly, it also creates an artificial threshold for lenders to limit the amount of lending they can do in the economy based on how much mandated lending they're about to do. So as far as Agri-Agra is concerned, the current law actually provides for a review after 3 years, so the timing is good for us to look at some of the revisions to the Agri-Agra. On the MSME again, today it's limited to companies with asset bases of up to 100 million pesos, and I think as time has gone by with inflation, we should start re-looking at those limits and see whether we can extend that to beyond 100 million and get a larger base of coverage. In terms of investment options, there are basically two ideas here. If you look at the ability of a Filipino to invest offshore, so today, legitimately, a Filipino can take his dollars offshore and invest in various instruments, whichever of their choice. And what that has done is that we have actually moved the wealth management business to hubs like Singapore and Hong Kong. The proposition is that if we can make a few changes to some of our security codes and laws, we can actually move that wealth management business back into the Philippines and therefore generate more jobs, create more income, etc. And the couple of ideas that we have is, one, in terms of expanding the qualified investor base, it's a little restrictive in terms of very high income levels have been specified. And secondly, it is based on income, which means you have to submit your ITR, but not based on your net worth. And effectively, there are cases where people have passive income, so they don't really have ITR, but they have net worth, but they're unable to qualify under the investor base. The other is to fast-track the registration of securities, which in any case Filipinos can invest offshore if they take the dollars outside, but they're unable to do that here. And one of the, I think, the most promising securities is exchange-traded funds. We already have 5 listed traded funds based on Philippine index, registered outside, being traded in Hong Kong and New York, but we can't do the same thing in the Philippines. And again, if the changes could be made to the securities code, this would be a very interesting proposition, both for Filipinos as well as for foreign investors coming into the Philippines. The third, again, strengthening legislation with a view to create more business opportunities. Let me again start by congratulating the administration by passing the 2 provisions in the AMLA recently. I think there is scope to extend the coverage of AMLA, which is already there in a draft bill, which was proposed earlier. Those provisions were not included in the approvals or the law that was signed earlier this year. But activities like gaming are very important to the Philippines, given that is an activity which we would like to promote, both in terms of tourism and business. And that's an issue in terms of anti-money laundering. And if activities like gaming can be also extended, the AMLA can be extended to cover gaming, it will attract more capital into that sector. On the real estate investment trust, again, I believe there are discussions already on. So we are hoping that we can get the revisions out so we can start using the Act, which has already been passed, to be able to provide investors and issuers a very attractive opportunity to both raise funds as well as in terms of investments. In terms of special courts, again, given the proliferation of cyber crimes, what we would like to do is create special courts so the whole process can be expedited. I believe in the United Nations they already have proposed the formation of an international tribunal for cybercrime, and we hope Philippines can take a leaf out of the book. So clearly, from the finance and the business and the banking sector, The three things in terms of top priority for us would be if we can fast-track the mortgage legislation, which will allow foreign lenders to partake in a very important sector, the mortgages. The second would be if we can find a way to revise the SRC to be able to expand the qualified investor base, which will again allow us to bring back the wealth management business into the Philippines. And third, and not the least important, is the coverage of AMLA to cover gaming sector as well. Thank you once again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Bill Schultz of Coca-Cola will talk about retailing and consumer manufacturing. Bill?
Thank you. Your Excellency, President Benigno Aquino III, and honorable members of the Cabinet, ladies and gentlemen, we at the Coca-Cola Company are humbled by the fact that the word Coke is the second most known word on the planet. But the first most known word is the word okay. And we hope that coming out of today's dialogue is a list of issues that we and the government can agree are okay to work on together and pursue over the course of your administration. But today I'm not here to represent Coca-Cola. I'm attempting to speak for the consumer products and retail industry. And as I spoke to some of my colleagues in the industry, I was surprised by the degree of unanimity that we felt on issues of importance between our industry and your administration. There are really three areas that we think we have a common agenda on. And the first, and probably the most important, is focusing on the Filipino consumer, making the consumer number one, and maximizing the purchasing power of the Filipino consumer. I don't know the statistics of everyone else in the industry, but in our business, only 15% of our volume goes through modern supermarkets, modern hypermarkets, modern convenience stores, modern fast food chains and restaurants. 85% of the business is through sari-sari stores, traditional food outlets, and public markets. That means that we have products that are appealing to a broad group of consumers, and it's very important that we do everything possible to maintain competitiveness and allow those products to be within price reach of those consumers. John has already spoken eloquently about the importance of the agricultural commodity base that becomes the basis for our products, so I don't want to repeat anything he said, but obviously making these industries globally competitive is good for those industries and then good for the consumer because it allows us to keep prices low. Of course, we have to get our products to market, and at Coca-Cola, we have almost 1 million customers in the Philippines that we deliver to nearly every day. To do that, we have to be on the roads all the time, and so the public-private partnerships and direct investments to reduce congestion or to avoid the need for truck bans, to improve drainage so that roads don't flood, all lead to fewer idle trucks, which is good for the environment and good for keeping consumer prices down. Philippines is a nation of islands, so any investments that allow us to increase the efficiency of ports and improve the cost competitiveness of the shipping industry island to island is also an opportunity to keep costs down for the consumer. And finally, energy is a very important area. I know that the administration is already focusing a great deal on energy. It's still a high-cost element for us. And it's not just the cost of energy, but the consistency of the quality of energy. For example, we have plants that shut down as many as 8 times in a day because of surges or dips in the electric supply. And it forces us to divert capital to things like backup generators and, of course, the cost to run those when necessary. The second broad area that I know we'll have clear agreement on is the need to create policies that create jobs. John talked about this as well. We have over 15,000 direct and indirect employees here in the Philippines, and the availability of highly skilled workers is critical. All the policies your administration is pursuing to invest in education are most welcome and very important, so that graduates are available with both the quantitative skills and the critical thinking skills to be ready to work as they come out of school. In addition, Some of my colleagues in the consumer products industry have multinational supply chain footprints, and things that allow them to find an attractive home here for those investments and to bring jobs to the Philippines obviously will also drive job creation in the Philippines. Third and last is an area that's a hallmark of your administration, and that's stable rules of the road. And of course, a level playing field is crucial, but also coordination between national and local regulations. For example, it's not possible for us to have different packaging rules in different provinces when we have national supply chains. We need to continue the impressive focus you already have on stemming corruption, but not just at a national level, but of course also at a local level, because we're all operating at both simultaneously. Innovation is the lifeblood of the consumer products industry, and so speed of registration of new products allows us to accelerate the stream of innovation, which serves consumers better as well as our businesses. And finally, we recognize the need for clear standards and guidelines, and the industry in general is in support of a competition bill, appropriately implemented, of course, and the need for some kind of standards and screening for advertising, which we believe should be the ASC. Three key points, then, that we hope to work on with your administration is the opportunities we talked about to maximize consumer purchasing power, to drive job creation, and to maintain the stable rules of the road that you're already so focused on, while doing anything possible, of course, to accelerate progress and reduce red tape. A final personal plea, of course, maybe a bit more difficult for you to accomplish on behalf of the beverage industry, would be to see if you can arrange for all the rains to come only at night. Thank you, and we look forward to continued engagement.
Thanks, Bill. Mr. President, you've heard from 4 different sectors. We have, of course, many other sectors, as I've mentioned, but you, I think, are quite familiar with most of them. I would perhaps mention mining as being a particular interest to us at the moment because of the investment, the new rules that you are looking at, the new policy you're looking at, and we're eagerly waiting to see, because I see that as actually one of the industries that, like in Australia, can be a major driver of growth for the country. And IT, I think, one of the others. But perhaps you'd like to make a few comments on what you've heard today, or more or less anything else.
Thank you, Peter. I think the first comment I'd like to make is I really envy all of you. You can look at a particular problem and specifically just from one sector's viewpoint, whereas I have to balance everybody's interest at the same time and hopefully come to an answer that pleases everybody, even when they have conflicting views on the same matter. Let me just try and respond to some of them. Perhaps let me start with pharmaceuticals. One thing that we're working on is actually also the gathering of statistics within government. You say 6 out of 10 Filipinos do not get to see a health professional in their lifetime. The statistic given to me was 4 out of 10. So I asked the National Statistics Office to give me actually the latest figures, because when we started out it was 4 out of 10, now we are at 6 out of 10. So I said, we are even diminishing the access of Filipinos after 2 years in office, and I don't think that's the case. So they came up with a whole bunch of statistics that didn't actually address the question of how many Filipinos get to see a health professional. I have the data for how many mothers get neonatal care, how many children who have diarrhea manage to get to see a health professional, and so on and so forth. They've actually disaggregated the entire field. So I'll have to ask them again, can we just have that statistic of Filipinos who never get to see a health professional? Okay. Having said that, Secretary Ona of the Department of Health tells us that we have 82% coverage already for universal health care. We are actually down to that level that represents the informal sector that we have difficulty finding and actually enrolling in the program. But still, the goal is 100%, if I'm not mistaken, by 2014 in universal health care. So more membership, and as you did mention earlier, we launched the catastrophic or the Z-type cases, that will also be covered by PhilHealth. So more people being covered for more diseases, having access to more services. It's not a plan, it's actually a reality at this point in time. your flat growth. No? We were actually trying to determine the flat growth in your sales. And on the one hand, I think, is it less access? We don't think so. But perhaps that is also an indicator that the health program is actually working. I hope you don't mind if we hope that not too many of our countrymen patronize more and more of your products, because that means they're sick. So if it's flat or it's moderately increasing, then perhaps the health program is actually taking root and working. We'd like to revisit this monopoly issue, especially at the wholesale level. My Secretary of Trade and also the Secretary of Transportation are, I think, in-house experts on the issue of pricing. A review of the price controls. I subscribe to the same view that if we have exactly the same medicine being sold here in another country, there has to be some parity of price. There is no justification for having multiples to our countrymen's detriment for the exact same product, not a substitute, but for the exact same product. So we are very reasonable. We would want to see everybody, meaning the consumer and the producer, getting a fair shake. And we will review. We're classical economists, so we'd like the marketplace to determine. But when there are distortions within the marketplace, I think government really has to intervene. Okay. Can I move on to Leslie? We'd like to confirm. Yes. The figures cited earlier for the coffee seedlings, 2 million seedlings, 2,000 hectares, covers but a portion of the so-called convergence program. Convergence is a program by DNR, DA, and DAR. Now, primarily, we have a problem of lack of forest cover. We're down to, the figures vary depending on who you talk to. So we want to replant trees. We're going to plant 1.5 billion trees by the time I finish in 2016. How is this different from previous programs? You have all of the ceremonies of planting the trees, then nobody takes care of the trees. As soon as they grow to some marketable size, they're cut either for charcoal or for wood. So you keep on replanting, but you actually destroy the forests more than you replant. So the convergence program basically says, we actually have people on a conditional cash transfer program already enrolled. You guard the trees, which is the only condition. You're given a stipend. Coffee or cacao are planted. Hopefully within a year and a half to 3 years, it will be mature. You will be harvesting the same. So the program started in northern Mindanao, and other areas. We have 128,000 hectares planted to coffee, rubber, cacao, and various forest species. We haven't finished with this. We are very, very excited. You address, some of the informal settlers actually will be resettled. They have a preference for upland areas. So you have a solution for the informal settlers partial. You have a solution for protecting the forest and therefore the flood control program. You have income generating and increase in agriculture. So this really convergence of so many problems and attendant solutions is something that we are very excited about, and we will really support this particular program. With regards to the Citigroup's concerns, the threshold for small and medium enterprises can be reviewed, I understand, from the current law by the SMED Council. So we think we have tentative agreement that perhaps the upper limit can be revisited so as to keep this avenue for finance open to the small and medium enterprises. Special courts for cyber crimes and offenses. As you know, we're in the midst of judicial reform. We also have we actually have a lot of issues with the judicial system, and we have just undertaken a major step. But this is our desk has, we've come across a lot of data that does indicate that we are being utilized by international groups in cybercrime. So this is an idea worth mentioning to the incoming Chief Justice, who is head of the judiciary.
Can we know who that is yet?
Not yet. First of all, I don't have a list yet. I can only pick from the list that will be given by the Judicial and Bar Council. Can I ask the Secretary of Energy to comment on the issues of power?
On power pricing, we continue to encourage base load generation expansion because that's really the key to the bringing down prices. The cheapest source of electricity are your base load plants. We have a situation that we are using non-base load plants or more expensive fuel plants to generate base load, which is one of the reasons why our electricity is high. Our problem is we can't find enough people who would like to host such plants. We know we do not lack interest in building new generation capacity, but we do have people who are opposing all of these new base load generation capabilities that's coming in. But just to let you know, the ERC approved generation charge for Meralco or Luzon is actually 5 pesos and 35 centavos per kilowatt hour. Today, we are signing contracts at 465 per kilowatt hour. There is a new coal-fired plant proponent who's willing to come in at 4 pesos and 25 centavos per kilowatt hour. So from the 535 to 425, that's a 1 peso 10 centavo cut in generation charge. But we have to allow those plants to be built. We have to make sure that those plants come in because the newer plants are going to be more efficient. We expect rates to level off. There will be spikes when we have problems with some major facilities, like when we have to do our repairs and maintenance for the Malampaya system. But on the whole, rates have been relatively flat except for the new spikes. On the quality issue, yes, we know there are problems, especially in the electric cooperative areas, where voltage is a problem simply because the electric cooperatives have not been investing in the proper transformers or in the proper size wires. We have started a program to enhance these problems. There's a transmission development plan and there's a distribution development plan. We have started that. There have been some improvements in some areas, but we also must admit that we have to reformat some of these electric cooperatives because sometimes it's not a technical problem, it's a political problem. And we are very serious in that process, which has made me very unpopular in many provinces in the Philippines, but we will continue with that process of making sure that the distribution utilities, especially the electric cooperatives, will step up as far as distribution quality is concerned. Thank you.
What about the full opening of Western to the market?
No, it's the open access that we're looking at. Yes, the open access is definitely being pursued. We are working on it. We are working with the Energy Regulatory Commission on guidelines and rules because that's where our big challenges are right now. We were simultaneously working. We are continuing to target it towards the, as we've announced to the last quarter of this year. There are real challenges being faced up. I cannot give an update as to whether we slide it by a few weeks or a month, but there definitely is, we're really pushing for it now. Why do we want to do it this year? Because there's a new power plant coming on stream in Luzon towards the end of the year, so it's a perfect time to do it. And we don't want to shift into open access during the summer months, where you normally have a shortage because of the increased demands. But the expansion there too is required by law, and it will have to happen. Just to clarify, there is no automatic shortage in the summer months. There is increased demand. For every degree increase in the temperature, there is a corresponding 200 to 300 megawatts increase in consumption. We are an air conditioning economy. Luzon's total demand is about 7,006. Metro Manila or Meralco, or if you want to talk about just this place, it's almost 5,600 megawatts, and a lot of them is air conditioning.
Just to say what he said, or to repeat what he said in a shorter manner, we believe that the solution towards making more electricity prices more reasonable is first you have to have the capacity. So that has been the primary focus, have the capacity installed on baseload plants and not for plants that should not be baseload. Second, have that full competition which will happen with open access. And when the Secretary of Energy says we, that doesn't just mean we in the administration, but actually, more importantly, we to include the Energy Regulatory Commission, which has such a significant say and which is actually subject of a review with regard to the EPIRA law, because they have not been performing as quickly as one would hope. Okay, and can I ask Secretary Ross to comment about the port facilities?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen from the business sector. Just to give you a snapshot, the President has given us a direction to spend about roughly half a trillion pesos, about $12 billion over the next 3 to 4 years on transport infrastructure. This will be high-quality spending because the President has exercised political will such that this money will not go in dribs and drabs to all sorts of little port projects here and there, but to be focused on logistic centers so that there can be greater efficiencies. Historically, what has happened, for example, if you look at northern Mindanao, there are a number of ports there that are all underutilized, and historically, for political reasons, all these little ports got a little bit of money. Accordingly, cargo and shipments were atomized, boats were smaller, therefore no economies of scale. So given the President's direction of developing logistics hubs, then most of this spending will be focused on the larger ports to make these ports more efficient, more cost-effective, and therefore more contributory to efficient movement of goods across the country. Case in point would be in northern Mindanao, the old Cagayan de Oro port versus what the government has already borrowed money for and already has in fact in place, which is the newer port about 12 kilometers down the road, So at least the Fibidec port. So our concentration, both from the DOTC, in coordination with DPWH, will be to fully support the Fibidec port so that it's more efficient, greater volumes, larger ships, more efficient transport of cargo nationwide. There are a number of projects all across the country, airports and ports. Again, for airports, we have about 88 airports, only 45 of which have commercial flights. President has exercised political will by saying, let's concentrate on those airports that actually have flights and not spend all sorts of money on all these other airports that have no chance, or at least in the near term, of having all these flights. So it's going to be very focused. President is exercising his political will so that the money is not dribbled around, dribs and drabs, doing all sorts of things, but really not moving the transport sector forward. We'd be happy to meet with and fully engage, and maybe Peter, you can do this, if you can get your logistics managers together to point out specific point-to-point routes or specific ports that have problems or bottlenecks or something. We're limited by our experience and our understanding, so if you can buttress that, then we'd be very happy to fully engage with yourselves so that some of these things can get earlier attention than otherwise.
Validate the data that we have.
Or to validate the data that we have. So that could be a product of the Wallace Forum, Peter. But no charge, okay? Thank you.
You'll be free.
Okay.
Can you just comment also on the traffic situation? The slideshow na issue was EDSA. EDSA needs something like 3,600 buses to service our commuting public. There are actually closer to between 11 and 12,000 buses that fly EDSA. Okay, most of these are the provincial buses that have terminals within the environs of the NCR, and they add. Obviously, they add to the traffic. situation. The solution is, and we're working on, there are 3 terminals. One will service the route going to Cavite. The solution is, you will have these terminals at the fringes of the NCR. So that, intermodal, yes. So, for the most part. One north, 2 in the south, one for, again, Cavite, the other for Batangas, Laguna, Quezon, environs. So that there is no need for the 7,000 plus buses from the provincial routes to crowd the NCR. We think this will be a very significant drop, no, in usage, and it will greatly ease the traffic situation. Of course, the LRT expansions, the one going to Cavite, the one to San Jose, Del Monte, Bulacan, and the one to Antipolo are already boards. Then infrastructure. Our roads have not really expanded in all this time. The North Luzon extension, North Luzon Expressway, South Luzon Expressway connector will hopefully be operational sometime in 2014. As you know, there will be two of these connectors. So you will have again a lessening of the demand to use EDSA and other environments. I am told that the initial study says Clark to Calamba will be 1 hour 15-minute travel time, traveling within the speed limit. Okay. Now there was a slide on local governance issues. No? We are working on really upgrading also the local government units. We want a change in mentality from what gets me elected to what is good for the long-term benefits of the community. And some of it might be counterintuitive to those who keep on remembering that they have to run again every 3 years. So there is actually an SWS survey handed to me, and they note 24% increase in positive perception in the issuance of local permits by city and municipal governments, 73% satisfaction rating in the performance of the said units in processing papers such as permits and licenses. But that is still an initial step. We know that there were 2 LGUs that were extremely unfriendly. There was a major investor that was going to their area and has given up and going to relocate, but fortunately still within the Philippines. So it is a work in progress. There are various programs that encourage positive behavior from the LGUs. Getting the good housekeeping seal gets access to more funding from them. No? But again, there is more and more. There's a drive for more decentralization of power, but at the same time, there has to be a corresponding drive that once more power is gained, that there is greater execution and exercise of this power towards the common good, as opposed to purely parochial interests. As you know, one of the issues we had early last year, we had the Pagbilao issue. And we negotiated with the LGU that, okay, Quezon gets a certain amount, the country loses a multiple of 4 or 5. So we utilized the rules and the laws that are present, and we came to a good agreement with them. But there is still some tension because there is that movement towards more and more the empowering also of the LGUs, but at the same time, the responsible exercise of this power. So please give us more time, and I think you will see more progress on that aspect. We would prefer to use the carrot rather than the stick, but we are prepared to use the stick for those that are really have been caught up in totally outmoded and Neanderthal thinking. But we will try to achieve all of this through consensus. I think we covered most of the issues, and I'm sure that you know that the other matters that you've raised were conditions that we inherited, but it actually has had significant changes. So I'd like to thank you for giving us this opportunity to hear you out and for you to hear us, and it's a government that responds to all of its constituents. So please do get in touch. We recognize we are not perfect and we can improve. But also, when you talk to us, please bear in mind, we have a constituency that encompasses the whole spectrum, and we cannot view anything and any topic and any issue just from one particular set of eyes. Thank you. Good afternoon.